These are three Formula One teams arriving at Suzuka with completely different upgrade strategies, and what they bring to the Japanese Grand Prix could define the shape of this entire season before a 5-week break shuts the door on development until Miami. Mercedes has been flawless through 2 races with consecutive 1-2 finishes and a 31-point lead in the Constructors' Championship. Ferrari, Red Bull, and Aston Martin are all chasing, but the scale and ambition of what each team plans to introduce in Japan tells you exactly where they stand and how desperate things have become. Ferrari arrives at Suzuka carrying the most clearly defined upgrade package of the 3 teams. The headline is the return of the Macarena rear wing, that radical design featuring flaps that rotate up to 270 degrees in the opposite direction to traditional DRS-style systems. Pre-season testing gave it its first outing, and a single free practice session at the Chinese Grand Prix followed before engineers pulled it for the race. Instability forced the decision in China. Both drivers reported problems during the closing phase, which made the already difficult braking phase harder to manage. Lewis Hamilton spun during that practice session, partly because the rear wing closed too slowly. Ferrari engineers have since refined the opening and closing timing, improved synchronization between the front and rear movable wings, and made a minor change to the internal mechanism. According to La Gazzetta dello Sport, the team plans to run the Macarena wing throughout the entire Japanese Grand Prix weekend and has prepared spare components for both cars. 2 actuators mounted in the side end plates replace a central actuator, which reduces drag. When fully open, the wing reportedly delivers approximately 10 km per hour of advantage at the speed trap. The trade-off is weight, and that remains a problem because the SF26 already sits 6 to 7 kilograms above its target. Autosport describes the current version as the first stage of development, meaning further evolutions cannot arrive until the standard version works properly. A revised version of the halo-mounted winglet is also coming, that small aerodynamic fin that first appeared on Charles Leclerc's car in China. Rival teams were preparing a protest over whether its declared function as a windscreen was genuine, which prompted its removal after the sprint race. The FIA has since ruled it legal and compliant with 2026 regulations, and a revised version using thinner, potentially more transparent materials is expected at Suzuka. Behind the visible hardware, Ferrari's power unit department has been working on energy recovery and management optimization. The team estimates it sits 20 to 25 horsepower down on Mercedes. Ferrari's smaller turbo design delivers excellent race starts but potentially less efficient high-speed recharging compared to the Mercedes unit, which is why the team is pushing to maximize energy harvesting in slower sections and during transitions, reportedly considering the use of lower gears in certain situations to keep engine revs high for better recovery. And here is what matters most. This is not the full package. Multiple sources confirm that Ferrari is holding its comprehensive B-spec SF26 upgrade for the Miami Grand Prix in May. Frederick Vasseur has noted that cost cap constraints play a role, since shipping large components to flyaway races burns development budget. Japan is described partly as a data collection weekend, which tells you Ferrari is playing the long game even as it trails Mercedes by 31 points in the Constructors' Championship. Red Bull's situation carries far more urgency. 5th in the Constructors' Championship with just 12 points after 2 races marks the team's lowest start since 2015. Max Verstappen sits 8th in the drivers' standings, and the qualifying deficit in China stretched to approximately 1.7 seconds behind George Russell's pole time. For a team that dominated as recently as 2023 and 2024, that gap is enormous. According to Italian outlet Autoracer, the RB22 will receive its first car updates of the 2026 season at Suzuka. Both Australia and China saw the team run launch specification, so these represent the very first technical changes since the car was built. Specific component details have not been publicly confirmed by credible primary sources, and detailed pit lane analysis of exactly which parts Red Bull has brought typically emerges on Thursday and Friday of race week. Team principal Laurent Mekies framed the situation after China by saying the team has learned so much over the past few weeks and expects to be more competitive from the next round in Japan. He also acknowledged the gap to Mercedes is large and that Red Bull requires what he called a 360 improvement. The honest reality is that even strong upgrades are unlikely to close the gap entirely. When you are over a second behind in qualifying and roughly a minute adrift in race pace, one upgrade package does not fix everything. But this is a necessary first step, and the 5-week break after Suzuka gives Red Bull additional development time before Miami. Pierre Wache, the technical director who now oversees all car design following Adrian Newey's departure, acknowledged before the season that Red Bull was not the benchmark and could clearly see Ferrari, Mercedes, and McLaren ahead. Aston Martin occupies a different category entirely. 0 points and last place in the constructors' standings tell the story. Neither driver has finished a race on the lead lap, and what the team brings to Suzuka cannot really be called upgrades in the traditional sense. These are reliability fixes and countermeasures aimed at keeping the car running. Honda's work on vibration countermeasures for the battery and motor sits at the center of the effort. Koji Watanabe, president of Honda Racing Corporation, stated before the season that Honda's first target was Suzuka, and that by then they wanted to make progress on vibration countermeasures and get the power unit in a state where it can be used properly. Shintaro Orihara, Honda's trackside general manager, confirmed ahead of Japan that some progress came in China on battery reliability through reduced vibration, but added that the team must find more solutions and that performance is not where they want it to be, especially regarding energy management. The root cause of the vibrations has not been found, and that is the critical detail. The problem stems from what Honda described as a complex interaction between the internal combustion engine, chassis integration, and the compact new packaging concept requested by Aston Martin. Fernando Alonso reported after China that he started to lose feeling in his hands during the race, and Lance Stroll described the car before Japan by saying, "Unless they can find some magic, pray for me." Spare batteries ran out in Australia, and by China the team was critically short on replacements. Stroll himself acknowledged that the battery situation is very fragile. None of that allows the team to meaningfully evaluate chassis or aerodynamic performance because the power unit has not yet reached a state of reliable operation. Suzuka's 18-corner figure 8 layout with its famous S-curves at speeds between 200 and 260 km per hour is considered the best truth test of a car's fundamental aerodynamic balance. No setup tricks can hide a deficient car through that sequence. The mix of sustained high-speed sections and heavy braking zones makes energy management especially relevant, and the active aero transition from straight mode to corner mode under braking will stand as one of the defining technical challenges of the weekend. This is the last race before a 5-week gap. What these three teams learn at Suzuka will shape everything they do before Miami. If you found this breakdown useful, subscribe and leave a comment on which team you think will make the biggest step forward in Japan.